So let us start a practical class number 13, which is about the pharmaceutical processes. So different pharmaceutical processes. So the first question is that why this different pharmaceutical process is required. So as we know, only there are very few drugs that are in natural form which should be administered as such. And there are various natural form of the drug in crude form, and that is first to be make it administrable form, and to make a crude form a drug into an administrable form, the drug has to go through the various processes. We call it the pharmaceutical processes. So pharmaceutical process itself a process in which we are going to convert a crude form of drug that are usually not in administrable form, and to make it in administrable form is called pharmaceutical process. And the drug may go through one or more processes. Why this is required? The question is arises why this is required? Because as we know, natural drugs are bulky in nature. It produces vomison. It may be toxic, and the amount that we are taking that are insignificant amount, and that will not produce an appreciable effect. So that is why we have to convert a crude form of drug and make it in administrable form. So now we have to start with the different pharmaceuticals processes. So let us start pharmaceutical processes. The processes we are talking that are mainly concerned for the separation, particularly the liquid separation. And that are the first one is the centrifugation. I think we all have gone through a machine, we call it the centrifuge machine. So in that what they are going to do? They are going to rotate it to the extent through which the substance which possesses the higher specific gravity move outward direction and get deposited in the bottom. We call it sediment, and the force through which the higher specific gravity substance move out by the force, we call it the centrifugal force. And the lighter particle may remain on the upper layer, and we call it the supernatant. So supernatant is the upper layer lighter particle, whereas the sediment is heavier and higher specific gravity, and settle down at the bottom is the sediment called the sediment. So what is centrifugation? Is a process. By this process we have to separate out the heavier or the higher specific gravity material from the lighter one by applying a force, centrifugal force, to form the sediment, and the supernatant is called centrifugation. And what is that mixture is that? The mixture is of solid and liquid, or it may be the both liquid. Like we have seen the milk. When we are churning the milk by the centrifugal force, the heavier particle move out and the lighter particle like makhan remain at the supernatant, and the low and the other heavier particle gets settled down. That is the sediment. So this is about the centrifugation. Next is the decantation. So decantation is very simple. So what is decantation? In this we are also separating. What we are separating? We are separating the liquid and solid or other immiscible liquids. So for that, what we have to do, so this is also a process in which we are pouring off the clear supernatant fluid from the insoluble solid that usually settle down at the bottom, and we have to separate it out the supernatant one, and the process is called decantation. So decantation is simply a process of pouring off the supernatant fluid that is clear, and usually the insoluble solids particle are settled at the bottom of the container. So we have to remove the supernatant one, and therefore we have separated solid from the liquid. So that means that supernatant get out and the solid that is still at the bottom that gets separated out. And as we already seen, there is a clear-cut demarcation between the supernatant fluid and insoluble that solid usually settle at the bottom. So again, I am repeating the same term. Decantation is the process. We are separating the liquid from the solid or other immiscible liquid by removing the supernatant layer, that is the liquid layer, that usually at the top, from the solid one that usually settle at the down, and we have to separate it. And the process is called decantation. Now we have to go through the filtration. This is also very much common. And this is also the way of separation of the liquid from the solid. And for that we may use the filter paper that we are usually going through in our lab. Take the example, if you pour the water, the sand in the water, and you have to remove out maybe through the decantation also. Maybe through the decantation also, maybe through filtration also. But in filtration, we have to use some porous substance like filter paper. That filter paper helps to separate out the liquid from the solid, and therefore we have to obtain the optically transparent filtrate or the fluid, and the process is called filtration. So filtration is the simple separating a liquid from the solid to get the optically transparent fluid by using the porous material called filter, and therefore the porous substance we call it the filter or filtering medium. So this is about the filtration. Next is the straining or collation. This is also quite similar to the filtration, but in place of filter paper, here we are taking the cloth or other porous substance. And in this, we only separate the coarser particle from the liquid. So this is the process of the filtration. That is why here written the filtration. This is the process of filtration where we use the porous substance or the cloth to separate out the coarser particle from the liquid by pouring, is called straining. So this is about straining and collation. Next is the clarification. So clarification is the also way of separating the solid or the colloidal material, and the solid should be very finely divided, and that has to be separated out from the liquid, But in this, we are not going to apply the filtration and centrifugation. As we have seen in case of filtration, we have used filter paper. In centrifugation, we are applying the centrifugal force to settle down the heavier matter at the bottom down. So, in this, clarification is also a process of separation of finely divided particles or solid, also the colloidal material from the liquid by a method other than filtration or centrifugation by changing the pH and the temperature of the medium. So here very important is the by changing the pH or the temperature, we have to separate out the solid from the liquid. So this is about the clarification. Next is the dialysis. I think most of the people, we all are aware about this terminology dialysis, because in kidney problem in human patient, they are going through the dialysis process. So what is this? This is the process in which the crystalloid from the colloid has to be passed out through the biological membrane, is the process called dialysis. So dialysis is the process of separating, what we are separating, crystalloid from the colloid by passing it through the biological membrane. Usually the size of the colloid is more in size than the crystalloid and from the iron. So simply this is the process of separating the crystalloid from the colloid by passing it through the biological membrane is called dialysis. Next, now we have to go through the terminology which we have to see only to reduce the size of the solid particle. So here we are talking about the way, the process by which we are reducing the size of solid particle, either by rubbing, either by grinding, either by applying circulation method, either by cutting. So we have to go through the terminology one by one. So first term is the comminution. So what is comminution? This is the process of reducing the size of the solid particle into fine particle, and the size should be of varying size by applying either crushing, grinding, cutting, vibrating, or other process. So comminution is the process of reducing the substance size to fine particle, or reducing the solid to varying size by either applying any one like crushing, grinding, cutting, vibration, or other process to reduce the size is called comminution. Next is the grinding. So the grinding is the process in that we are reducing the solid particle into a small particle by applying circular motion and in the motor and pestle is called grinding. So grinding is the process of reducing the size of small particle into very fine particle by applying continuous circular motion in a motor and pestle is called grinding. So similarly, the another term is the levitation. So levitation is also called wet grinding. So what is this levitation? In this is also the process of reducing the size of the substance to very fine powder by means of grinding, I mean circular motion, and in this we are putting very small quantity of liquid, and that liquid is the liquid and the substance to which we are reducing the size are insoluble in nature, is called levitation. So levitation is the process also for the reducing the size of substance into very fine particle by circular motion or by grinding, in which we also have to have one liquid very small in quantity to reduce the size of the substance, and that liquid is the substance is usually insoluble in the liquid. So this is called levitation or wet grinding. Next term is the trituration. The trituration is the also process of reducing the size. So the trituration is the also the process of reducing the size of solid particle to very fine particle by rubbing, and this is trituration usually performed in the mortar and pestle is called trituration. So this is also a process of reducing the size by into very fine particle by rubbing, and the mortar and pestle is called trituration. Next is the disintegration. In disintegration, this is also the process of reducing the size, and this is also called a process in which we are applying the grinding of substance. But here we are using a machine. So disintegration is the process of grinding of a substance by going it through high speed percussion in a machine called the disintegrator, and the process is called disintegrator, and the process is called disintegration. Now we have to go through the another size reduction is the contusion and bruising. This is the term associated with the surgery, but in pharmacology, the meaning of the contusion and bruising in connection to the different pharmaceutical process is also a reduction of the size of the particle into a smaller size by succession of blow or by succession of blow using the mortar and pestle is called contusion or bruising. Now we have to go through the next size reduction process is the slicing. So slicing like the bread slice, we are going through slicing of the bread. Similarly, here we are also reducing the size of the drug by cutting. So size of the drug we have to reduce by cutting is called sliding, and for that we have to use the cutter. And in addition, there in a cutter which have the rasp, then we are calling the process is called rasping. Means cutting of the drug, that is called slicing, in which a rasp is present. Rasp means a rough surface area for rubbing if is present is called rasping or sifting. Next is the sieving and or sifting. I think this term we already gone through the very common term sieving. Sieving means we are removing the things by passing through the sieve. What is sieve? Sieve is the area. Take this is the iron area, and that the hole present in that hole is we are calling it the sieve. So this is called sieve. So sieving is a process in which we have to get the drug of uniform size by passing it through the sieve. So what is sieve? Sieve is a process in which we have to pass out the drug through a screen or through a sieve that made of uniform aperture, and that uniform aperture application, and with that we are also applying some type of motion on the screen so that the drug size is less than that the size of the whole of the sieve will pass out, and we have to get the uniform size of the drug is called sieving or sifting. Now next is the decoloration. Name is clear cut indicating removing of the color is called decoloration. So if we are removing the color of a solution by a process is called decoloration. or depriving the solution color is called discoloration. And for that we are using the adsorptive medium that will adsorb. Example is the charcoal which adsorb the color, and therefore it remove the color, that is called the discoloration. Next terminology is evaporation. Evaporation is the word with that e prefix is attached. So e means out, remove a vapor that we know. So evaporation is a process to escape out the vapor from the liquid, and that evaporation should occur below the boiling point of that liquid is called evaporation. So evaporation is just simply the vaporization, escaping out of the vapor from the liquid below its boiling point is called evaporation. Next is the distillation. I think most of the students, they are they have seen the apparatus distillation set, and what the thing is going on in distillation set. In distillation, this is a process that is occurring in the distillation set, in which the water or liquid get converted into vapor, and then again vapor get condensed back to the liquid is called distillation. And the another term is the fractional distillation. So what is this fractional distillation? If the liquid possessing various different type of liquid and that are volatile in nature and that also possess different boiling point, then we have to separate the different volatile liquid from each other with the different boiling point by heating it, by boiling it from lower to higher. What it means, when we are boiling a liquid solution, that liquid solution possessing more than two or three liquid with different boiling point, mixture of different volatile liquid with the different boiling point, then we have to start boiling. So and that should be a start from the lower temperature. So if the liquid are different three type, and these all the three type is having the different boiling point, if the first one is having the lower, then the lower get evaporate first, and we have to collect it from vapor to liquid. Thereafter we increase the temperature up to the boiling point of the second one, and thereafter we get it in the form of vapor, then liquid after condensation, and then we have to remove the second also. And the third one is having somewhat slightly more boiling point, then again we increase the boiling point of the distillation set, and therefore boiling the third one, and then again we condense it, and then get the third one. So this process is called the fractional distillation. Whereas the destructive, the name is telling destruction. Destructive distillation is the process of decomposition. And why, how this decomposition occur? By heating. So destructive distillation is the process of decomposing by heating of a substance out of contact with the air. The air is usually not found, and even if required, we have to give very meager amount of air to separate this substance is called destructive distillation. And the example is grease head isolated from the wood tar. So this is about the destructive distillation. Next is the sublimation. In sublimation, this is also the process of the purification. This is the process of purification, and This will vary from the distillation. In distillation, we are converting liquid to vapor, then again condensed to the liquid. Here, we are converting the in sublimation. We are heating the solid and converting it in up to the vapor, and then again we are converting it by condensation into vapor to solid is called sublimation. So sublimation is a process of purification in which we are transferring a solid to vapor, and then we are condensing the solid to vapor, and then we are condensing the vapor without passing through the without passing, this is very very important, without passing through the vapor state, liquid, I mean liquid state, without passing through the liquid state, and then vapor we have to condense it to the solid is called sublimation. So in sublimation, there is no liquid state. We are converting solid to vapor and then condensing the vapor to solid. Is a process of purification of drug is called sublimation. Now we have to go through the another terminology, extraction. So what is extraction? Extraction is the process in which we have to get, we are extracting many things from the plant, like alkaloid, like a glycoside, like a tannin, like a resin. So in what we are doing, we are using a solvent. How? Actually we are keeping the plant powder and or a plant as such in a solvent, so the substance that are soluble in the solvent that get dissolved, and the solution we get, that is with the soluble drug in the solution solvent is called extraction. So extraction is the process to extract out the desired principle from the crude drug by treating them with the solvent. The solvent is called menstruum, and thus as a resultant we get the solution that have the desired soluble substance, like the example extraction of alkaloid. So for extracting the alkaloid from that crude drug, we have to use a specific solvent that will extract out the alkaloid is called extraction process, and the solvent is called menstruum, and the solid that remain intact there, that we call mark, MARC. We have to read later on, read the what is the mark. So mark that solid insoluble material MARC that left is called mark, MARC. Next is the maceration. Maceration is also quite similar to the to taking out the substance with the help of solvent, but here we are uh, solvent. Here we are not applying heat. So we are not applying heat. So what is this maceration? Maceration is a process in which we are steeping the crude drug, steeping the substance. Steeping means soaking of the substance in the solvent is called steeping. So the maceration of pressure process of steeping, or you simply tell the dipping of the crude substance or the substance in the solvent, and in the solvent we can't use any heat, and thereafter we get the dissolved substance from that that crude substance, and soluble portion get dissolved, and insoluble substance get in form of residue. So insoluble substance that remain intact in solid form, that is called mark, and that the soluble that gets dissolved in the solvent, that the solvent is called menstruum, and then the soluble drug that get dissolved in that menstruum or solvent, and the process is called maceration. Next is the percolation or lixiviation. So what is this? Percolation is the process in which we have to pass the crude substance. Over the crude substance we have to pour the solvent. We have to pour the solvent, and then the solution we get is possessing the soluble substance isolated from the crude substance is called percolation. So how it differ from maceration? In case of percolation, we are not directly dipping it in the or soaking it in the solvent. Rather, in percolation method we are pouring the or descending the solvent over the substance. So percolation is the process in which the soluble ingredient of the crude substance get isolated by descending by descending of the solvent over the substance, or passing out of the solvent through the substance, and the process of extraction of the soluble portion from this substance is called percolation. Now next term is the digestion. So digestion is also simply maceration. So how this percolation differ from maceration? In maceration we are directly dissolving it in the steeping it or soaking it in the solvent, whereas in percolation we are percolating, we are descending the solvent over the substance from which we want to get the dissolved substance. It's called percolation, whereas digestion is also a maceration process, but that is called a prolonged maceration. How it differ from maceration? In this digestion process, where that is prolonged maceration, in case of simple maceration we are not applying heat, but in case of digestion we are applying gentle heat to isolate the dissolved material from the substance by the process we call digestion. So digestion is the process of prolonged maceration, means it is prolonged maceration of a substance by applying simple gentle heat which helping the solvent to dissolve more dissolving substance from the plant is called the digestion. The dissolving, the undissolved material that remain left is called mark, whereas the solvent is called menstruum. So this is about the digestion. Next is the expression. So what is expression? So expression, when we are taking out the oil from the seed by applying the pressure, is called expression. Again, I am going to repeat the same thing. Take the example of soybean oil, soya mustard oil. So we are taking the mustard seed, we are taking the soybean seed, and we are applying it, applying the pressure over this seed, and therefore from that we have to take obtain the plant oil, and the process is called expression. So expression is the process of separating liquid from the solid by applying pressure, like the plant oil are obtained from seed by expression. Next term is the granulation. So the term is telling the definition. So is the process of converting a drug in granules from is in or in grain form is called granulation, whereas the incineration or calcination or burning, we are burning the drug. or we are exposing the drug with the high temperature, and that high temperature convert the drug into ashes form is called incineration. Next is the precipitation. So I think most of the people, we all are aware about the precipitation. So precipitation is also very simple process. In that process, we are separating a solid particle from the clear fluid or from the solution by means of physical or chemical changes. The separated solid is called precipitate, and precipitate cause a substance to be deposited in solid form, a solution, solid form from a solution. Okay, so precipitation is a process in which a substance to be deposited in solid form from where? From a solution is called precipitation. Next is the standardization or assaying. So standardization, name is telling, is the determining the strength of the drug. So standardization is a process to know about the strength of the drug to maintain the uniform potency is called standardization, whereas the sterilization is the very important terminology, and this is also a process by which medicament or container or whatsoever you want to sterilize, so you have to get the freed the medicament or the container from the microorganism, applying dry heat, moist heat, filtration, radiation, or chemical is called sterilization. So this is all about the practical class.